In this class, we're going to be taking an evolutionary approach to understanding human variation and human evolution. Now, the first step in that process is expanding a little bit more on this idea of what is evolution. A basic definition of evolution is that evolution is heritable change in a population through time. Now, it's necessary to break down each of these components of this definition a little bit further in order to better understand what that means. Heritable change, with an emphasis on the heritable aspect, most commonly we use to refer to DNA, the genetic molecule that's passed on from parents to offspring and codes for the basic developmental plan as to how our bodies develop throughout life. The second component of this is the notion of a population. Evolutionary change is not my change as an individual throughout my life. It's the change of the population that I'm part of. We don't think of evolution in terms of the level of the individual. We think of evolution as acting on populations. So how populations of individuals have heritable change. And the last notion is this concept of through time. Again, evolution is not my change from birth to death. That's something that we refer to as simply as development. Rather, evolution is how I differ from my parents, or even more, how my children differ from their grandparents, my parents. So evolution occurs on the scale of generations. Our point of focus is generally populations, and the component in which we're really looking at about are those changes which are heritable, those changes which are passed on from one generation to the next. Now, there are a couple challenges with this as we move into the understanding these questions in a fossil record. The first of all is that in looking at fossils, we're not necessarily looking at populations. We're looking at individual specimens, or perhaps samples of specimens. So one of the first challenges is translating fossil-based data into population data and thinking about that relationship, something we'll talk about more fully next week. This notion of through time also comes into place when we look at the fossil record. Fossils come from, at times, very specific points in time, but oftentimes from differing points in time. And actually understanding exactly how much time separates fossils can be a challenge, but something we certainly need to incorporate into the knowledge that we develop out of the fossil record. The final aspect is this notion of heritable change. When we're looking at the fossil record or the associated geological record, we're not looking at an evidence of DNA for the most part, though by the end of this class we'll certainly be talking a lot about inherited DNA. Instead, what we're talking about is morphological changes in fossils, differences between skulls, differences between postcranial anatomy, between one specimen and another. We generally believe that differences in morphology correspond to underlying differences in genetic or heritable change, but this is an issue that we'll also further explore later on in the class. But evolution is heritable change in a population through time.